Diddy, you know Diddy?
Diddy,
one of my best friends.
Okay.
Right? Okay. When you want to be a Kappa, you want to be Kappa, you want to be Alpha, whatever the it is, okay? We're gonna haze you and haze you and haze you until you are a Kappa. That's what happened. People sold their souls to Diddy. And then they're mad now because the hazing process was a little bit rougher.
Los Angeles wasn't just hot because it was summer. It was on fire for a whole different reason. Federal agents, prosecutors, media vans, and court sketch artists, they were all outside the federal courthouse like it was the Grammys. And the star of the show? Not a platinum-selling artist, not an A-list actor. It was none other than Orlando Brown, the wild card, the internet's favorite walking headline, the same dude folks laughed at on social media, now standing tall as a federal witness in a criminal case that got the whole entertainment world shook. Orlando Brown didn't just show up to testify. He came locked, loaded, and lethal, armed with receipts that had prosecutors nodding like DJs. And this wasn't a couple messy tweets or hazy recollections. Nah. Orlando brought cold, calculated voice memos, secretly recorded over 3 separate weekends at properties connected to the one and only Sean Diddy commies. Yes, that Diddy. Bad Boy Records, champagne in the VIP, walking billion-dollar brand. Now caught up in a swirling hurricane of legal heat with Orlando Brown standing at the center like a storm prophet. According to what dropped in court filings, Orlando wasn't stumbling into this moment. He had been prepping for this. The man had a burner phone on airplane mode, kept secret from everybody in the room, including Diddy's tight-lipped staff. Whenever something fell off,
Nigga, you can't de-king a king. Why do you think I love Diddy so much? You're not gonna dethrone this man because he know how to get you there. By way of hazing you, I call it haze. And we're gonna still do this. We're gonna still do this. It's not gonna stop. Take that. It's still gonna happen. The bitch got 3 million and we're still waking up in the morning, drinking cognac, screaming, bad boy, bad boy.
whispers in the hallway, footsteps during the off hours, too many staff movements in guest wings. He turned it on, hit record, and documented everything. Names, noises, lighting changes, radio codes, even the vibe. Nothing escaped him. And federal agents, they cross-referenced every second of it. Orlando's memos lined up perfectly with router logs they already had. The same second his phone recorded a security radio squawk, the estate's internal Wi-Fi pinged the device. When he talked about lights dimming in a hallway, the smart home system showed manual overrides happening in that exact spot. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was a timeline, a live map of what had gone down behind closed doors. And Orlando had just stepped into the role of narrator, historian, and whistleblower all at once. His team didn't come to play either. They confirmed that his phone identifier showed up in restricted zones right when he claimed to be there. No editing, no faking, just raw audio packed with metadata that gave prosecutors a digital map of the weekend operations. The prosecutors didn't waste time hyping up what they had. They broke it down to the court with confidence. Orlando Brown was now a key witness, not because of clout, but because of cold, hard evidence. And the recordings? They weren't just gossip material. They had substance, they had timestamps, and they had corroboration from lighting logs, linen service orders, and internal camera metadata. Federal documents revealed an internal phrase had come up several times: heartbeat reset. It sounded harmless on the surface, but according to prosecutors, it was anything but. This phrase was used in security chatter, marking the exact moments doors were unlocked and relocked, and camera feeds were momentarily cut or dimmed. Prosecutors alleged it was a code used by the staff to cycle security protocols and allow things to go down away from watchful eyes. Orlando, in his recordings, described bizarre scenes. He made notes about who was naked, who was pacing, who was whispering near locked doors, who was dragging carts through mirrored corridors. He described scenes that could only be labeled as ritualistic.
Trying to kill me. You know, Diddy and Jay-Z, Auntie Sean and Auntie Yolanda. No matter how many contracts you try to take out on my life, no matter how many times you try to threaten my family or threaten people to stay away from me, no matter how many things you try to do to me and how many things you've tried to do to me, it ain't working. Don't play with somebody that you know got the drop.
I literally took one sip of my beverage and the whole side of my face felt like I had a stroke.
He talked about being hazed, about Diddy operating not just as a party host, but a gatekeeper of something far darker, more manipulative. According to court insiders, Orlando's memos captured the type of detail you can't fake, the kind of stuff that even a screenwriter wouldn't think to write. The precise moment a light switch clicked off, the shuffling of multiple pairs of footsteps converging near the guest wing, sudden drops in air conditioning hums when doors opened, and the exact phrasing of internal walkie-talkie codes used among staff. What stunned even the hardened agents working this case was how Orlando's memos lined up with data from the estate's lighting system. Diddy's properties were equipped with state-of-the-art smart home systems that tracked every manual override. And over those 3 weekends, 4 instances showed lights being dimmed for exactly 6 minutes each, all during times Orlando was recording, and always in the same guest wing. Still, Diddy's defense team tried to flip the script. They claimed the phrase "heartbeat reset" was harmless, used in the hospitality industry to mean nothing more than aesthetic lighting changes or resetting automation cycles. They argued Orlando was exaggerating for personal gain, maybe looking for leniency in his own Nevada gun case, where he had a separate cooperation deal on the table. But prosecutors clapped back, hard. They emphasized that his cooperation agreement stated clearly, if Orlando lied, even bent the truth slightly, he'd lose all benefits and face full sentencing. He had every reason to be real. Judge Aaron Subramanian wasn't here to play games either. He moved fast, confirming the chain of custody on the phone and marking Brown as an official witness. The prosecution laid out their strategy like a movie director presenting storyboards. First, they'd play Orlando's memos in order. Then they'd lay synced footage, router pings, and digital forensics alongside each voice note. And finally, they'd bring in expert testimony to explain to the jury how none of it could be faked.
I got on a plane at 5:30 a.m. So this party, I think half the people there were butt naked.
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Every beep, every data point matched Orlando's timeline to the second. But the defense was ready to go blow for blow. They were bringing in luxury estate consultants and hospitality experts who'd claimed that disabling cameras or shifting linens multiple times a night was standard VIP practice, not shady behavior. They'd argue that Brown's erratic past and media chaos made him unreliable, and they'd lean on the idea that the jury might already associate this case with other major scandals, Epstein, Maxwell, or even previous Diddy rumors, clouding their judgment. Outside the courtroom, the entertainment industry was already cracking. Top agencies were revising how they handle events. There were sudden calls for third-party safety reps, anonymous hotlines, stricter phone policies at private parties. Even private insurers were scrambling, asking new questions about access control, lighting overrides, and what guest refresh carts were really used for. In a major twist, Brown's name appeared on a congressional witness list for an upcoming hearing about guest safety in creative industries. Lawmakers were now considering a bill that would fund anonymous tip lines for partygoers and performers alike, a direct result of the shockwaves this trial had already sent through the industry. Meanwhile, Diddy sat in a federal cell, with no bail and no bond. His lawyers filed motions arguing that everything prosecutors presented, those linens, those lights, those doors, were just rich people things. Normal stuff for a man with estates across the globe. But Orlando was believable.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told the courtroom straight up that his focus wasn't on cutting deals. His cooperation deal would vanish in smoke if any of his statements proved false. He had one job: to tell the truth. By the time court broke for recess, jaws were on the floor. Prosecutors had just played one of the recordings, captured at 3:17 a.m., where Orlando described lights pulsing red in a slow rhythm and a group being quietly guided through mirror-paneled doors. That visual? It matched a still frame from a nearby motion-triggered hallway camera. A housekeeper, a labeled cart, a timestamp less than 60 seconds after Orlando's memo. And that was only the beginning. The courtroom wasn't even back in session for a full 5 minutes before it felt like the walls were closing in. Everyone was tense. Prosecutors were flipping through color-coded folders like DJs getting ready to drop the hardest mixtape of their careers. And Diddy's team? They were sitting stiff, stone-faced, no more cocky smirks.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So,
You say you know he's innocent.
1,000%.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what? Maybe I can break the model. Maybe I can show the world that a black man can win, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
No more flashy watches peeking out from the cuffs of $1,000 suits. This wasn't just a celebrity trial anymore, this was full-on survival mode, because now it was Orlando Brown's turn to take the stand. Not in theory, not as alleged witness, but physically right there, standing tall under the pressure, as the courtroom locked eyes on him like he just stepped out of a tabloid and into a war zone. And no matter what folks thought of him, crazy, washed up, viral clown, whatever, they couldn't deny one thing anymore. He had the room in a chokehold. Prosecutor Celia Grant wasted no time. She walked him through the basics, established his presence, and then turned the heat up. She had him confirm the memos. Not just one or two, but the entire stack. Orlando said it was all him. His voice, his phone, his words. Everything was captured in real time, on location, without edits. And the feds backed it with lab analysis that said those audio files hadn't been touched, not even trimmed. When they played the second voice memo in court, the room went dead silent. It was one of the heaviest ones, recorded just after 3 a.m. You could hear Orlando's breath.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
The tension in his voice, the eerie rhythm of hallway lights shifting from bright white to a dim red glow. He described the red pulse as a running heartbeat, and the prosecutors didn't even have to say anything. The vibe said it all. Then came the kicker. A still frame from a hallway camera popped up on the screen. There it was, one of Diddy's housekeepers pushing a cart labeled Refresh, time-stamped exactly 58 seconds after Orlando captured the same scene. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Subramanian allowed it in. The defense objected, tried to call it repetitive, said it was just the same point dressed up in a new slide. But the judge wasn't having it. He told the room that multiple layers of confirmation mattered. This wasn't a movie. This was federal court. To nail down the credibility even harder, the prosecution called up Dr. Maya Chen, a signal analysis expert who is basically a human lie detector for audio. She walked the jury through how her team analyzed the ambient sound in Orlando's recordings. Every memo had the same combination of low-level ventilation hum, faint background music, and spatial echo that matched the exact layout of the estate's blueprints. According to her, it was a sonic fingerprint. You don't get that match unless you're in the exact same room. The defense tried to brush it off. They said HVAC noise repeats, that any big estate would have similar audio patterns, but Chen shut it down. She explained that the combination of variables, vent rhythm, bounce back echo, Music Bleed, was unique to a specific wing. She even showed a spectrogram side-by-side with an audio blueprint, and it was like watching the crime scene sketch itself out. Still, Diddy's team wasn't going down easy. They tried shifting the narrative. They pulled out a hospitality manual that talked about heartbeat glow as a luxury lighting feature, meant to soothe guests with a slow, pulsating ambiance. Their argument was simple. Orlando was overreacting to normal rich people amenities. But the prosecution was 10 steps ahead. They clarified that the manual described a permanent setting, not a manual override that coincided with suspicious movement, radio chatter, and guest wing activity. Then came the voicemail. This wasn't from Orlando. This was a staff member, a coordinator under Diddy's event manager, leaving a message on Brown's second phone. The forensic team already matched the voice to that employee. The message was short but powerful. It said that the heartbeat would be upgraded and ready by the weekend. Another smoking gun, another receipt on top of the pile. The defense argued it was vague, but the judge let it slide in. Vague or not, it matched every other element prosecutors had layered up. Memos, logs, video stills, light dips, and now voicemail. Diddy, sitting at the defense table, didn't react. No headshake, no side-eye, nothing. He just stared forward, lips tight, like a man watching the walls of his empire inch toward collapse. His legal team tried to spin it for the cameras later, saying he was focused on the facts and ready to clear his name. But behind closed doors, people in the courthouse said it looked more like a man clenching his jaw just to keep from crumbling. Now, what made this even more surreal was the broader context. This wasn't some isolated court case. Diddy had been facing lawsuits, whispers, NDAs, and civil settlements for years. The whole industry knew. People joked about the parties and the events, but no one ever really talked. Now they had to, because prosecutors weren't just dragging Orlando onto the stand. They were using his memos to crack open 3 decades of silence. A procurement ledger was pulled up next. It came from a supplier who confirmed that during one of those weekends, there was a rush linen order labeled Guest Refresh, with a handwritten note to use the heartbeat cart. That cart wasn't just laundry, it was a color-coded system for emergency requests, meant to enter certain zones quickly, discreetly, and with priority. The supplier, Olivia Martinez, testified that this cart was rarely used and only under high-pressure situations. She didn't budge when defense tried to shake her. Even when they brought up how long ago the order was, she held her ground. Said she'd never forget how the system worked because she was the one who trained the team on how to use it. The prosecution kept the fire coming. Next up was Tyler Blake, the estate's former building automation engineer. He confirmed that during the 3 weekends Orlando recorded his memos, there were 4 manual overrides in the lighting logs, each in the guest wing, each dimming the lights for 6 minutes exactly. None had memo notes explaining why. Blake said that normally every override had a notation for documentation, whether for a stylist, a photo shoot, or even just setting a mood. These didn't. That silence, in Blake's words, spoke volumes. Defense lawyer Matthew Hartley tried his best to reframe it. He said Brown had media interviews where he told different stories, different head counts, different timelines, and different energy. But Orlando fired back in court, telling the jury that what he said on podcasts or casual chats had nothing on his memos. Those recordings, he said, were made in real time, unfiltered, and backed by data. They weren't storytelling, they were evidence. The prosecution rested their case with one last bombshell, a payroll ledger. It showed unusual payouts issued that same weekend, staff bonuses marked as non-disclosure premium. No explanation, just stacks of money moving right after the red glow nights. Diddy's defense was cornered. Their closing argument was coming. They had hospitality experts and automation system reps lined up to say all this was regular activity at high-end